It started, as these things so often do, with a sense of accomplishment. My life, until that point, had been a meticulous blueprint followed to the letter. I, Arthur Penwright, was a man of angles and measurements, an architect who believed that any problem could be solved with the right design and a firm foundation. Reality was concrete, steel, and glass. The ethereal was merely a failure of engineering. It was this certainty that led me to the townhouse on Elderwood Lane. It was a relic, a tall, narrow sliver of a building squeezed between two modern monstrosities, a defiant holdout from a bygone era. For me, it was perfect. I was 32, newly promoted at my firm, and I saw the house not as a decaying structure, but as a project, a canvas for my ambitions. The price was suspiciously low, but I chalked that up to the market's obsession with open-plan living and sterile white boxes. I craved character, history. I saw the peeling paint, the water-stained ceilings, and the groaning floorboards as a testament to a life lived. I was a rational man, a skeptic. I believed I was in complete control of my new reality. My girlfriend, Chloe, who lived 2 hours away, called it my gothic folly over video chat. "Are you sure about this, Art? It looks like it might have stories," she'd said, her smile a mixture of amusement and concern. I had laughed, panning my phone camera around my new living room, the boxes stacked like geometric mountains. "Good stories," I corrected her, "the kind that gives a place soul." The soul of the house was its staircase. It was a magnificent, treacherous thing, a tight spiral of dark, almost black, mahogany that corkscrewed up through the core of the 3-story building. Each tread was worn smooth in the center from a century of footsteps. It creaked and groaned with every ascent and descent, a constant mournful dialogue with itself. I loved it. It was the house's heart. The first hint that something was wrong was subtle, easily dismissed. A persistent cold spot on the 3rd step from the top of the final flight leading to my attic office. No matter the time of day or how high I cranked the heating, that single plank of wood remained unnaturally frigid to the touch. A draft, I told myself. Old houses are full of them. Then came the sounds. At first, it was just the house settling, the familiar pops and creaks of old timber. But soon, another sound wove its way into the nocturnal symphony. It was a soft, wet sound, like a child crying into a pillow. So faint I could almost convince myself it was the plumbing or the wind whistling through a crack in the window frame. I was working long hours on the new museum proposal, sleeping little and drinking far too much coffee. Fatigue, I reasoned, was a powerful hallucinogen. The first undeniable event occurred about 3 weeks in. I was working late in my office, sketching furiously, when my favorite fountain pen rolled off the desk. I watched it clatter onto the floor and bounce out the door, coming to a rest on the landing. With a sigh, I pushed back my chair and went to retrieve it. As I knelt down, my fingers brushing against the cool metal, I saw it, a shadow at the bottom of the long, spiraling stairwell. It wasn't my shadow. It was small, hunched, and it darted away with an unnatural speed the moment my eyes focused on it, disappearing into the deeper gloom of the first floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stood up slowly, every nerve ending screaming. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin and foolish in the oppressive silence. Nothing. Just the gentle hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen below. My mind, my ever-reliable, logical mind, scrambled for an explanation. A mouse? The shadow of a passing car's headlights through the front window. I clung to these rationalizations like a drowning man to a piece of driftwood. But a cold seed of dread had been planted. The staircase no longer felt like the heart of the home. It felt like a throat. The following days, the subtle incursions became more personal. I'd come downstairs in the morning to find small, muddy handprints on the polished banister, far too tiny to be mine. I would wipe them away, my hands trembling slightly, only for them to reappear a day later. The crying sound grew more distinct, resolving itself into the unmistakable, heartbreaking sobs of a young boy. It always seemed to emanate from the staircase itself, as if the wood were weeping. I started taking the stairs 2 at a time, avoiding the cold third step without consciously realizing I was doing it. My fortress of logic was beginning to crumble, brick by agonizing brick. I was no longer sure I was in control of anything. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. I was in bed, trying to read, when I heard a new sound. Plink, plink, plink. It was a small, hard object being dropped, one step at a time, from the top of the stairs. It was a slow, deliberate rhythm, a child's game. Plink, plink. The sound was methodical, patient, and utterly terrifying. It continued its descent, each drop echoing in the cavernous silence of the house, a countdown to something my mind refused to contemplate. I lay frozen in my bed, sheets pulled up to my chin, my breath held tight in my chest. When the sound reached the bottom step on the ground floor, it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise itself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the headboard, a heavy lamp clutched in my hands, listening to the house breathe around me. The sun rose, painting the room in pale, watery light, but it brought no comfort. My skepticism was dead and buried. I was living in a haunted house, and I was utterly, completely alone. My desperate search for answers began online, with frantic searches for history of Elderwood Lane and house hauntings. The results were generic ghost stories and local legends, nothing concrete. My rational mind, though battered, still craved evidence. I needed a foundation for my fear. The logical next step was the city archives, a dusty, hushed library of forgotten facts. It felt like a betrayal of my own principles, seeking a supernatural explanation, but the memory of that rhythmic plink, 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 overrode my pride. The archivist was a kindly old woman named Mrs. Gable, who also happened to be my next-door neighbor. When I told her the address I was researching, a flicker of something, pity, perhaps, crossed her face. "Ah, the Blackwood House," she said softly, her voice raspy with age. "That place has a deep sadness to it." She hesitated, then seemed to decide something. "Some houses, they hold on to things. Be careful, young man." She pointed me toward a collection of microfilmed newspapers from the 1920s. It took hours of scrolling through faded print, my eyes burning, but then I found it. A small article from October 1928. "Tragedy on Elderwood Lane," the headline read. It was a brief, dispassionate account of the death of a 7-year-old boy named Thomas Blackwood. He had apparently been frail, suffering from a respiratory illness that kept him indoors most of the time. The official report stated he had tripped and fallen down the main staircase, breaking his neck. An accident. My blood ran cold, but it wasn't enough. An accidental death, however tragic, didn't explain the malevolence I felt, the intelligent, playful cruelty of the marble on the stairs. Mrs. Gable, seeing the look on my face, took me to a back room. "The city acquired the contents when the last Blackwood died without air," she explained, gesturing to a stack of sealed cardboard boxes. "Family effects. No one's looked at them in 50 years. It was in the third box, beneath a pile of moth-eaten linens, that I found it. A small, leather-bound diary, its cover warped and stained. The name, Eleanor Blackwood, was embossed in faded gold leaf on the front. Thomas's mother. My hands trembled as I opened it. The initial entries were mundane, the daily thoughts of a mother caring for a sick child. But as the pages turned, a thread of deep anxiety began to unravel. June 12, 1928. "Thomas is afraid of the stairs again. He says a man lives inside them. A ragged man, he calls him. He says the man whispers to him from the cold step near the top. I've told him it's just the house groaning, but his fear is so real." July 3, 1928. The whispering. Dear God, I hear it now too. A dry, rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It comes from the wood itself. It promises things. It told Thomas it could fix his weak lungs, make him strong. It tells him he just has to step through. August 21st, 1928. Thomas spends hours sitting on the landing, just staring at the third step. He doesn't talk to me anymore. He only listens to the stairs. He says the ragged man is his friend. When I tried to board up the staircase, the front door locked itself. "We are trapped in here." The final entry, dated the day before Thomas's death, was written in a frantic, almost illegible scrawl. The ink was blurred in places, as if by tears. October 4th, 1928. He took him. Thomas went to him. He didn't fall. He walked to the third step and smiled at me, a horrible, empty smile, and then he just stepped into the wood. It was like watching someone step into dark water. There was a sound like splintering bone, and he was gone. The thing on the stairs took my boy. It devoured him, and now it waits. It whispers my name. It knows I am alone. I slammed the diary shut, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. The room swam before my eyes. This wasn't a haunting. The ghost of the little boy wasn't the threat. He was the bait. The staircase wasn't a path between floors. It was a gateway, a predator's mouth, and something ancient and hungry lived within it. The Ragged Man. That night, I called Chloe, my voice shaking uncontrollably as I tried to explain what I'd found. I read her passages from the diary, my words tumbling over one another in a desperate torrent. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Art," she finally said, her voice laced with a careful, measured concern that felt like a physical blow. "Listen to yourself. You're exhausted. You've been working too hard. An old diary from a grieving mother. People wrote all sorts of things back then. It's a sad story, but that's all it is. You're letting this old house get to you. Maybe you should come stay with me for a few days. Or maybe talk to someone." Her skepticism, once a comforting echo of my own, was now a wall between us. She didn't believe me. She thought I was losing my mind. The line went quiet, the distance between us stretching into an impassable chasm. I was utterly alone with my discovery, trapped in a house with a monster that everyone else believed was just a figment of my imagination. The sense of isolation was absolute, a cold, heavy blanket that smothered all hope. The Ragged Man had already won a crucial battle without laying a hand on me. He had severed my connection to the world I once knew. The entity in the stairs no longer bothered with subtlety. Knowing I understood its nature seemed to unshackle it, to grant it permission to be bold. The weeping of the child became a constant manipulative lure, echoing from the top of the stairs whenever I was at the bottom, and from the bottom whenever I was at the top. It was always out of reach, a siren song of sorrow meant to draw me onto the wooden treads. The whispers from the third step became articulate, slithering into my thoughts. "So tired, Arthur. So much pressure. Let go. I can fix it. Step through and rest." It was a voice made of creaking wood and desiccated rot, and it knew my name. Shadows in the house began to coalesce with a horrifying purpose. I would catch glimpses of it on the landing, a tall, impossibly thin figure that seemed to be stitched together from darkness and splinters. It was disjointed, its limbs moving at unnatural angles, like a marionette with its strings cut. It had no face, only a deeper patch of blackness where one should be. The Ragged Man. My home became my prison. Doors would slam shut and lock on their own. One afternoon, while I was huddled in the living room, trying to read Eleanor's diary again for some clue, some weapon, every book in my upstairs office was hurled from the shelves, the sound like a volley of gunshots from the floor above. The house was a living thing, and the staircase was its venomous heart. Worried by my increasingly frantic and incoherent phone calls, Chloe announced she was driving down for the weekend. "I'm not letting you go through this alone, Art, whatever this is," she said, her voice firm. A part of me screamed for her to stay away, to save herself, but another, more selfish part, craved the presence of another human being, a witness to my madness. Her arrival was a brief, sunlit reprieve. For a few hours, with her in the kitchen making coffee, the house felt normal again. We talked about anything but the stairs. We pretended. That night, the pretense shattered. I was jolted from a shallow, nightmare-ridden sleep by a scream. It was sharp, visceral, and pure terror. It was Chloe. I vaulted out of bed and ran to the landing. She was at the bottom of the stairs, pressed back against the front door, her face as white as bone. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the top of the stairwell where I now stood. "What? What did you see?" I yelled, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. A boy, she whispered, her voice trembling. There was a little boy, standing right where you are. He was pale and crying. He pointed at me, and then he melted. He stretched upwards and became that tall, ragged thing. She believed me. The relief was instantly drowned by a new, more profound terror. She believed me because she had seen it. And now she was trapped here with me. We had to get out. We ran to the front door, but the deadbolt was jammed solid. It wouldn't budge, as if it were welded shut. The back door was the same. We were sealed in. As the realization dawned on us, a new sound filled the house. The child's weeping had stopped. In its place was a soft, mocking laughter. It echoed from all around us, seeming to come from inside the very walls, a sound of pure, malevolent glee. The air grew thick and heavy, carrying a cloying scent of damp earth and decay. The house groaned, the timbers straining as if under immense pressure. The staircase, in the dim light of the hall, seemed to be breathing, each step rising and falling in a slow, patient rhythm. The game was over. The hunt had begun. My sanity, already frayed, began to unravel completely. Sleep was impossible. Every creak was the ragged man approaching. Every shadow was the form of the boy, Thomas, beckoning me with his pale, translucent hand. I was a wreck, gaunt and haunted, jumping at every sound. The house was digesting us, slowly. The final confrontation came without warning. We were huddled together on the living room sofa, the dawn a faint promise through the grime-covered windows, when the Raggedy Man decided it was time. It didn't come down the stairs. It emerged from them. The wood of the main stairwell began to splinter and crack, the mahogany bending into impossible shapes. From the core of the spiral, the tall, disjointed figure unfolded itself, crawling out of the structure like a cicada from its shell. It was made of shadow and wood and agony, and it moved into the hallway, its form dragging and scraping across the floorboards. It turned its featureless face towards us. It wasn't interested in me. It shambled towards Chloe, who was frozen in sheer terror. A scream caught in her throat. At the same time, the spectral form of Thomas appeared on the third step. He wasn't laughing anymore. He was weeping again, his small face a mask of tragedy as he pointed a trembling finger, first at me, then at the empty space on the step beside him. "He can fix you," the ghost whispered, the words echoing directly in my mind. "He can fix everything. Just step through." It was a choice, my life for hers, my soul for her escape. But then, a flash of memory, Eleanor's last desperate words. She had tried to burn it. A desperate, insane plan ignited in my mind. My architectural supplies were in a crate by the fireplace. "Chloe, run!" I screamed, the sound breaking her paralysis. As the Ragged Man reached for her, I lunged for the crate, my fingers finding the cold metal can of turpentine. The creature turned its attention to me, its shadowy claws extending. I unscrewed the cap, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it, and hurled the contents onto the base of the magnificent cursed staircase. The pungent smell filled the air. The Ragged Man paused, as if confused. It was all the time I needed. I flicked the child-proof lock on the lighter and threw it. The flames erupted with an unnatural, hungry roar. The turpentine ignited in a whoosh of blue and orange fire, consuming the ancient, dry wood instantly. The Ragged Man shrieked, a sound that was not human, not animal, but the sound of 1,000 years of splintering wood and trapped agony. The fire clung to its shadowy form, and it was violently pulled backward, retracting into the burning staircase as if tethered to it. The fire spread with terrifying speed, devouring the house. The psychic pressure that held the door sealed shattered. I grabbed Chloe's hand, and we scrambled for the front door, breaking it open with our combined weight and spilling out onto the cool morning pavement. We didn't stop running until we were across the street, watching as our prison became a raging inferno. A falling beam struck my leg as we escaped, the pain a distant, secondary concern. We just stood there, wrapped in a neighbor's blanket as the sirens wailed closer, and watched the house that held the Ragged Man burn to the ground. We survived. But survival is not the same as being whole. The fire department ruled it faulty wiring, an old house's final, tragic failure. They found no explanation for the sealed doors. We never told them. Who would have believed us? My leg healed, but it left me with a permanent, slight limp, a constant physical reminder. The true scars, however, are invisible, etched onto my psyche. We moved into a new apartment, a sleek, modern, single-story building. There are no dark corners, no creaking floors. It should be safe. But I can't look at a wooden piece of furniture without my stomach clenching. I hear a child's faint weeping in the quiet hum of the air conditioner. The comforting certainty of my old life, the belief in logic and concrete reality, is gone forever, replaced by the chilling knowledge of what lies just beneath the surface. Chloe tries to reassure me. She holds me at night when the nightmares come, whispering that it's over, that we're safe. I want to believe her, but sometimes, when it's late, and I catch my reflection in the dark glass of the living room window, I see him. For just a fraction of a second, I see the pale, sad face of Thomas Blackwood looking back at me from just behind my shoulder, and I hear a whisper, a sound like dry, splintering wood, right beside my ear. He still waits,